It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. Yes, indeed-o. I'm Jill Schlesinger, back from my work trip out to Las Vegas. Mark, I don't think I can even say this on the radio show. So if you want to hear more about my trip to Las Vegas, go to our podcast, to jillonmoney.com. I will be explaining to you why I hate Las Vegas. And you'll hear it in all its glory. It's not really meant for broadcast, really. We are here to take the mystery out of your financial life. We do that by answering your questions. So if you have a financial question, just send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And that's the key. And if you'd like to join us on the air, if you want to come here to the Sleep Number Virtual Studios, just tell Mark, I want to come on the air with you. That's all you have to do. And if you are like Melissa from California, you will find this experience is far richer. Hi, Melissa. How can we help you out?
So what I'm puzzling about is whether I should be participating in the Roth 401k option via my employer. I'm currently in the traditional 401k through my employer. But the Roth 401k kind of perplexes me because I'm not sure if it would be beneficial for me to participate in it now because I don't know what my income in retirement is going to be. So I'm not sure if the tax benefit would be better now or later.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you single, partnered? What do you got going?
Well, I'm partnered, but we keep our finances separate. I'm 51. There's no kids. I have no debt.
And how much do you earn?
So I earn $75,000 gross. Mm-hmm. I'm currently contributing about 16% to my regular 401k.
And do you own property or do you rent?
No, we rent.
Okay. Based on your current situation with your 75 and partners, whatever, money's good, or like you're putting a bunch of money away into your 401k. So I presume your cash flow's okay?
Yeah, cash flow is fine. I have about $730,000 in a rollover IRA from a previous job. I've got about $40,000 in various high yield savings accounts. That's my emergency fund. I contribute about $1,500 a year to an HSA. I've got an individual Roth that I'm maxing out with the catch up at $7,000. I'm well prepared I'm on the way to be well prepared for retirement. I just don't know I'm not sure if I should be taking advantage of this Roth 401k that I have through my employer.
Well, it's interesting. You've got your tax bracket is not particularly high. It's, you're at the 22% for your income that is earned over about $40,500. So it's not as if changing that will move things around too much. Is there anything that could happen in retirement that would create income? For example, are you able to claim a pension benefit?
No pension, just regular Social Security.
In your Roth IRA right now, how much money do you have there?
The Roth is only about $8,000 because I just started it last year.
Okay. All right. So you're putting the $7,000 a year into the Roth. You're putting a bunch of money into your 401k, and you've got this big chunk of money in your rollover. And so all of this is great news. I think you've done a tremendous job. It's great. Do you have an idea about retirement age in the back of your mind?
When I look at my Social Security statement, it looks like it behooves me to work till 70, or at least not take Social Security until I'm 70. So I'm guessing between 67 and 70.
What does that Social Security benefit look like at age 70?
It is $3,367.
That's awesome. That's great. Did you make a lot more money in your previous iteration of your life?
I made more money in my last job, yes.
Aha, interesting. In your current 401k, how much money is in there?
It's about about 15,000 because I just started this job.
Okay. So here's what I think. I say do the Roth. I know that sounds crazy. I'll tell you why. Yeah, you're right. Your income is probably going to go down in retirement, but it is unlikely that you're going down to the 12% tax bracket. I really don't think that's going to happen. I mean, just look at your Social Security benefit and all the money that you have in pre-tax money that's going to be forced to come out. You're going to be earning, a lot of money. It's going to be 50, 60 grand a year, which is right where you are in terms of tax bracket right now. And you already have a lot of money that's already in pre-tax. So I like the idea of using the Roth in your situation. We don't know where tax rates are going, but if we had to make a guess, the worst case being the same tax bracket. And in the best case, you will have prepaid the taxes that are due, and you won't mess up a lot of the Medicare calculations, and you will have more money that has already been taxed. Mark, do you have a different view on this? Mark says that Ed Slott, friend of the pod, Ed Slott, that he has convinced Mark that Mark just wants certainty. And I think that that's the issue, Melissa, that with the unknown aspect of this, the certainty of at least a bunch of your money already being taxed, I think is really good. So how do you feel about that?
No, that sounds right. In fact, in between the time I emailed you and the time you contacted me that I was going to be on the show, I basically came to the same conclusion by myself in that the bulk of my retirement is going to be taxable. And why not go for this now? Because I see the wisdom of doing the 401k, the Roth 401k now, since it's not actually going to, whatever's in that account actually isn't even going to be the bulk of what makes up my retirement.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now, Melissa, one other question. You have a partner. Have you guys done any estate planning? Do you have wills? Do you have some?
I do. We are beneficiaries for each other on our the life insurance that we have through work. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially all I really felt like was necessary in terms of beneficiaries. I'd rather.
Okay. Cool. As long as you've got your documents, you might want to remind him that, like, if he got hit by a bus tomorrow, it would be nice to know that you could make a decision on his behalf if that's what he wants, because you're not married, so you're not naturally the person that someone's going to walk out of a hospital room and say, like, who the hell are you? I'm his partner. Really? So is there a document here? So even if he doesn't really want to even go through this, the least he should be doing is naming you as a healthcare proxy so you can pull the plug and get the insurance money. I
love you guys. I like it when you go dark.
Okay, we will get back to your questions in just a moment. During the break, head over to the website, JillOnMoney.com. Again, I mentioned in the intro that if you want to hear me rant about things, sometimes you have to go listen to the podcast. It's a little bit friendlier to a rant, not the terrestrial radio, the format that you're listening to. Go to JillOnMoney.com. There you'll find the Jill on Money podcast where you can subscribe. Also the Eye on Money podcast. Check it out, JillOnMoney.com.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are just going through and answering the questions that you have about your financial life. Next up, we have Amy. She is on the line from Colorado. Amy is found us just by sending us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Hey, Amy, what can we do for you?
Well, I've heard several callers now ask about whether they should be contributing to a traditional 401k or a Roth 401k. And we recently made the switch from traditional to Roth within my husband's employer retirement plan.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm wondering if that's still a good decision for us, given all the government's COVID stimulus measures and changes to the child tax credits.
Tell me about yourself, like your general situation. Like how much money do you guys earn, and what is it that you think you might want to try to capture?
Last year, the adjusted gross income was $143,000. That's from my husband's income, which is a base of around 130 and a bonus. And then we've also had some ordinary dividends and capital gains.
Ordinary dividends from, do you have a brokerage account?
Yes, we do.
How much is in that brokerage account?
About 190K.
Were you buying and selling, or when you say capital gains, did that happen because you had distributions within the funds? What happened in that?
Yeah, we've typically sold a bit each year. I have a bunch of company stock from a previous employer, and I'm trying to diversify a little bit slowly over time.
Okay. How much is in company stock?
I think about 75,000.
Okay, so 75 of the 190 is, and it's all long-term capital gains, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. All right. And how is your cash flow right now? Let's go back in time. How's the cash flow when you were using the traditional 401k? And how's the cash flow right now using the Roth version?
It's fine, but I do feel like we do a little bit of juggling, given that I'm not working right now. I'm staying home with young children, and my husband is working. And so to some extent, we have dipped into savings from when I was working, but we made it all work.
Okay. How much money do you have in that savings or emergency reserve?
We keep about 70,000 in emergency reserve, which is 9 to 12 months of living expenses. And then we also have an extra like 45,000 in checking right now for kind of short-term expenses, and just because the income's not entirely even throughout the year. So that's money that we'll need in the shorter term.
Okay, great. How old are your kids?
They are currently 5 and 2, but the little guy will be 6 before the end of the year, which I knew impacted the child tax credit.
I see. I want that money. Now, how much money have you guys saved in retirement assets? Let's break it down. It sounds like you worked for a while. So between you and your husband in the pre-tax or traditional assets, how much?
I did too, because we're older parents. I'm 43 and he's 52. And so, but we have about 800 in pre-tax combined and 270 in post-tax.
That's good. You own your home?
We do.
Okay. How much is it worth?
About 575.
Okay. Mortgage?
We have 250,000 left. We just refinanced to a 30-year at 2.75.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. That's great. Okay. Are you putting money away for your little soon-to-be scholars, your 5 and 2-year-old?
I kind of did upfront contributions, thinking just give it as long to grow as possible. So we do have about 60K in 529s now, but it's not a huge priority going forward.
Okay.
Grandparents are contributing a little bit for birthdays and holidays.
Oh, I love those kinds of grandparents. I especially like the ones that write bigger checks. What are the plans for you work-wise? You're home now, but is there an intention to go back to work when the 2-year-old gets into school, or are you really psyched about being home and this is great? Tell me which one you prefer to plan with.
We're kind of planning as if I don't, although the intention is to go back, but it's just very unclear what that transition is going to look like. I would like to get back to work.
It's a lot being home with the kids. You know, my friend, listen to this. I had a friend who is a lawyer, and she had her second kid. And she calls me up one day and she says to me, I have to tell you, I know that I was going to take a year off, but I'm very worried that basically if I do that, you will end up visiting me in the mental hospital because I can't do this. So it does take a certain type of person who can like really focus and be home full time. Mark is the more of the stay-at-home parent, not the mother of his child. So Mark, you can relate to that, right? Yeah, Mark said if this pandemic goes on any longer, he could end up in the mental hospital. You know what? I'd visit you, Mark. I really would. I'd bring the dogs. I hope that, they'd cheer you up. All right, Amy, let's get back to you. So Now you're sort of saying, oh my God, all of this money that could be out there, right? Whether the stimulus payments or these child tax credits, you could snag some of that money, at least certainly for this year, right?
Well, so we received the stimulus payments, $1,400 per person, but do you guys know if that's completely based on your 2020 income? In which
2020.
All right.
That's the reference point is 2020 for that. It will not be for 2021. So the question is, and same did you get your child tax credit? Are you going to be filing for that? Like what is it that you think you might lose if with the Roth?
That seems unclear when that would be coming out, but they're saying there's an option to opt out of it if you think your 2021 income might go up, so that you don't, receive payments and then owe it back.
Here's what I think. I tell you what, for this year, just do the stupid traditional. Let's make sure that you just clear it, take that money and get it. And then you can make a decision about next year. Truly. I think going to the regular one, just to give yourselves a little safe harbor makes sense. You do have money in the Roth already. You can go back to it next year. And by the way, if next year, all of a sudden you guys are making a lot more money and you would never, or even in a couple of years, it's unlikely, even if this child tax credit becomes permanent, which is one of the goals of the new plan that President Biden started talking about last week, the American Families Plan. I bet you guys aren't going to get it because you're going to end up, he's going to make more money. If you go back to work, you'll be making money. You won't get it. Okay. I think that this might be your 1 year to collect as much as possible. I say go for the traditional, even though it's sort of holding my nose to do it. But you know what? Go back next year. I think it's fine. It's 1 year only. I don't want to worry about it. I do want to say one thing about your company stock and the money in the brokerage account. Are you guys managing that yourselves?
We are.
If you look at the 75 grand that's in your company's stock, my question is, what is the gain that you are claiming on that?
I'm not exactly sure of the amount, but it's mostly gain.
Okay. So what I think you're going to probably want to do and really think about doing is that while you are not working, okay, so not for this year when you might get this, various benefits. But I think that you really want to start to think about looking at that brokerage account and pulling the trigger and getting out of the company stock and actually managing that non-retirement account for more tax efficiency in the future, because it might be well worth your time and energy to be able to focus on that, minimize the dividends, minimize the capital gains. You'll pay the capital gains, like big deal. It's a 15%. But if you do go back to work in the future and capital gains rates are going to rise, you could be facing a larger tax bill. So I do think that in the back of your mind, you should think about how can I make that brokerage account more tax efficient, especially if you end up going back to work.
Really good point. Thank you.
Do you guys have wills?
We actually don't, honestly. It's next on our list.
Okay. Can you move it up? Is that like right after you call Aunt Jill? You got to get that done. You got these kids. Come on, right?
You're right.
Okay. If you're like Amy, you want to come on the air, you want to ask your question, all you need to do is send us an email. Or if you're on our website, jillonmoney.com, we've got this nifty contact button. It's in the upper right-hand corner. And that will allow you to join us live. Isn't that fun? So check it out. JillOnMoney.com, the contact button, or just old school, send an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and I think that the most frequent question that we get is the ability to retire when you want. And if you'd like another set of eyes on that particular question, like Alex in the Bay Area, who we're about to hear from, then you should give us a holler. Alex, welcome to Jill on Money.
Hey, Jill and Mark. Well, thanks for having me on. I was actually reaching out to you to do a bit of a check-in on some retirement planning that we're doing.
Okay, we do a lot of that. So tell me what's your situation?
We're kind of eager to retire early and do some traveling. And so the plan we came up with was kind of a hybrid thing where we cover stuff, kind of pre-Medicare, just to cover the healthcare, and then kind of a secondary one once we reach that. Our plans seem pretty good so far, and they almost seem too good. So I'm really worried that maybe we missed something. And I was just kind of looking forward to having a second set of eyes on that.
You betcha. We'll even give you a third set with Mark's. This reminds me, by the way, of there's a great New Yorker cartoon, a Roz Chast cartoon. And it's like these people freaking out. And the caption is, what if things go all too well? Like that
Exactly.
freaks you out too much. Okay, so let's get the facts here. Alex, how old are you?
50.
Okay. And you said a we. So tell me about the we. How old is the we?
Yeah, my wife's also 50.
Okay, got it. Kids?
Yep, we have 3. One is 21, and we have some twins who are 15.
Oh, my God. All right. And is 21 done with college or partially or not at school? Where does 21-year-old lie in the process?
He has 1 more year left.
Okay. Are you looking at the sort of the graduation of the twins from college for the beginning first phase of the retirement?
Well, we're actually looking at maybe the graduation from high school.
Oh, on your own, kids.
plan.
Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
Okay, this is great. Okay, so we're talking about, let's call it, so 53-ish? Is that what we're thinking? 3 more years? Okay. Phase 1 is age 53 to 65, right?
Right.
Phase 2 is 65 and beyond, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your situation. So how much money have you saved? How possible is this? Let's check it out.
All right. Well, we have about 1.7 in our retirement accounts, 1.7 million. And then we have about 240,000 outside of those accounts. So part of this plan, the pre-plan, kind of hinges on selling the house and kind of living off that equity.
Okay. How much is the house worth?
About 1.4.
And is there a mortgage remaining on it?
Yes, 460,000.
All right. So essentially, by the time you retire, you get $1 million. Any tax due on that? For even though you get to exclude $500,000 of the gain. Any other tax that might be due for capital gains purposes?
No, I think we might be just at the limit to do it tax free.
When you look at your ages, say 53 to 65, how much do you think you need to actually spend in that period on an annual basis?
We're thinking 100,000 a year.
And then what about phase 2?
Phase 2, also, we're planning on 120. So we figure, Social Security will kick in a little bit there, but also we're hoping that our retirement money has grown in the meantime to allow for that. Kind of the 3% rule is what we're hoping for.
Okay. So how much money are you saving currently?
So we're maxing out our 401ks plus the catch-up contribution. So 26 for each of us. And then we're trying to maximize some money outside of the retirement fund since we're going to need access to that. So we're currently putting away about $30,000 a year in that.
Okay. This is a lot of saving for sure. Okay. And is there money set aside for the twins' college?
Yes, we have about $200,000 saved for them.
Okay, great. How much do you guys earn together?
$350,000.
Is there any flexibility on the time in terms of, 53 versus 55? Like, how do you guys feel about that? Is it like, oh my God, we're doing this no matter what, so deal with it, Jill, and make the plan work?
Well, yeah, I mean, we are very eager. We both kind of had some health scares over the last few years. So we're really kind of in that mindset of like, life's short and let's get on with this. But it's not a hard, fast. We're kind of looking at the high school graduation as sort of like the gate, but we're also not trying to, throw everybody out of the house and go nomadic right then either. So there's a little room. We're actually thinking of possibly just maybe renting a house kind of locally for a year just to kind of help with the transition.
That's smart, actually. That's actually a really smart plan because then you can sort of get into the mindset of what it's like and, kind of say, oh, this is great. I can lock the door and it's someone else's problem, which I like a lot. When you look at, you say you think you're on the right track and things are going all too well. Tell me about that. What is it that you see that is encouraging to you?
Well, it seems like, we've been trying to fit all the pieces together. And one of the big linchpins of this is sort of switching from having a house with equity and trying to be in this paid off house to essentially burning that equity. Essentially, we'd be living in VRBOs and that type of thing. And the money seems to work as far as how much it would cost per month to do that. Mm-hmm. But I guess part of me is, we've spent our whole life kind of like, buy the house, pay down the house. And then it's like, oh, are we going to turn around and essentially spend all that equity? Are we talking ourselves into a stupid move there?
Well, it's not stupid. I mean, it's like the dream, but so I don't want to say like, although Mark likes to say that I am the dream killer in some respects, that's so I was thinking that when you said sell the house, so you are presuming that the phase one is financed with the $1 million of equity, right?
Right. Plus the other stuff we have saved.
Okay. So in which case you're looking at what happens over 12 years with, I'm just going to kind of round it because by the time you retire, it's going to be, say, $2 million, right? So what you're saying is, will the $2 million, what will it grow to by the time we're 65? And also you're not putting money into that, right? So you have the 2 million and then what that 2 million could generate for you guys and in that second phase of your retirement, right? So like, honestly, it's not perfect, but I see how you can make it work. Okay, we're going to finish up with Alex's response in just a second. Again, the email address, askjill@jillonmoney.com or head to the website, jillonmoney.com. Click the contact button. You can come on the air with us.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. Hey, let's conclude our conversation with Alex from the Bay Area. We're talking about Alex's retirement. Let's finish up right now. I would be a little bit more comfortable if you had a larger cushion for the non-retirement assets. I would like it that if you came back, from this period, from phase one, I really would like it if you had more than $0 in non-retirement assets. So I feel a little bit like, you sure it's 53? Could we make it 55? Could it be, and then maybe test it. I mean, obviously you're going to test this every year you get closer, but I'm presuming what happens is that when you look at the money that you say, okay, I've got a $2 million portfolio, what will that generate in a withdrawal rate later in life, plus my Social Security, we're covered. Back of the envelope, I think you're right, but it's close. It's close. I would feel better, not so much if you had more money in retirement, but that if you really gave yourself a bigger cushion in that brokerage account. That's where I would go. And I think that, look, we don't know what the housing market's going to be like. Maybe, instead of netting $1 million, you'll be netting 1.3 million and there's a little tax to pay, which is fine. We don't know where income tax rates are going, so that when I look at the 2 million and you're pulling money out of that, and I don't know whether you're pulling that out and being forced to pay at a 22% or a 12%, we don't know yet. I think that there's enough variables here that at least make me pause and think, I sure would like there to be a little bit more of a cushion. And that cushion you can create just honestly by working an extra year, maybe two. If that is horrifying to you, then you probably can make it work. It's just that you might have to really, by the time phase two comes around, you're going to have to make a real determination whether the 120 a year is too much. And we don't know that yet. If you want maximum flexibility in the plan, you put more money into the brokerage account. If you are saying, screw the flexibility, I want to like pursue my dreams, life is short and it can be a little scary out there, then you have to be willing to at least consider whether or not that 120 is in play. I don't want to have to think about reducing my income later in life. I mean, if it happens naturally, great. Like you may be surprised to say, like, I'm not spending 100 grand a year. We're spending 80 grand a year in phase one, and we're spending 100 grand a year in phase two, and we are rocking and rolling. That's great. Okay. I just don't know if that's where you'll be. And for folks who are making a good chunk of money, 350 grand a year, even though you're saving a lot, you're used to a certain living standard. And I want you guys to be clear that something may have to give, and maybe we're wrong. Maybe everything does go so well that you are, smooth sailing for both phases.
Well, that sounds good. That is eye-opening because I think I was a little more worried about phase two than phase one. So this will give me something to look at.
Look, if there is something that changes and things are way better, then yeah, that's great. I always like way better is good, but we don't plan based on that. We plan based on worst case scenario and we work our way back, and then we never have to worry about the worst case scenario. So that's the beauty of sort of looking at your big picture. You're the second couple that we have spoken to today that has described this kind of desire to really kind of chuck it a little bit on the early side and travel and enjoy life. How do you feel about this all emotionally? Are you guys really like, it's fascinating to me because I just said to Mark after we spoke to this last couple, I said, I don't think I had the guts to do that. So besides the health part of it, a health scare, what else do you think contributes to that? Do you think that living through the year of a pandemic has maybe pushed this to we're really going to do this now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely, has kind of accelerated a little bit, but we've had this dream for quite a while. And sometimes maybe we're a little worried that, we want it too much and we're just kind of talking ourselves into it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think we just really want to have some time to enjoy, each other and the world and see a lot more.
Let us just be voyeurs. Where do you think you will be going to start this process?
Well, I think I have no choice over this. My wife is a huge Francophile, so we will definitely be starting in France, and it'll probably be my job to make sure we don't just spend 100% of the time in France.
I think that's great. I said to Mark and I both are also Francophiles, and so we both said if we were going to do it, we would start in France. And then how long do you think you'd be spending in particular locations? Do you think you'd spend like multiple months, or is it like go for a few weeks and then come back?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be several months, maybe 3 at the max. We're sort of picturing like, we'd return to home base and take care of all the medical appointments and visits and holidays and that sort of thing, and then kind of venture out again.
I'm like very excited for you, I have to say. I think it's great. Let's keep working the numbers. If you have follow-up questions, of course, do not hesitate. Before you leave, please make sure that all those estate documents are up to date. Make sure that all letters of instruction are up to date. Make sure kids know where stuff is, all that kind of stuff. Have those usually what would be more of like later in life talks. You got to have them sooner rather than later because weird crap can happen all over the place, right?
Definitely.
Alex from the Bay Area, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
If you, like Alex, need a second or third set of eyes, because Mark's eyes are on these questions as well, just send us a note, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. If you're on the website because you're signing up for our free weekly newsletter, good for you. We love that you're doing that. You can just click the contact button right after you sign up for the free weekly newsletter, jillonmoney.com, and we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. And, it occurs to me that so many of the questions we field from you guys, the financial questions, you may actually want a set of eyes that is dedicated as a business to looking at your financial condition. And if that's the case, you should check out our sponsor, Facet Wealth. Facet Wealth provides financial planning for pretty much anyone, and they do it with a flat fee. And that way, they really don't have any conflicts. So that's great. And you can get advice from certified financial planners, a dedicated certified financial planner who's a fiduciary who has to put your needs first. No wealth or account minimums. Go check out facetwealth.com. All right, let's do another question right before we go to a break. And this is from Ron, who says he loves the show. He and his wife are 50 years old. They've got $1.6 million in retirement accounts. They're going to retire at age 65. Income $160,000 combined. They're in great health. And they're thinking about long-term care insurance. And he says, good idea or waste of money. If we don't use it, the money is gone. Well, I mean, look, here's the thing. You guys, you've got a bunch of money in your retirement accounts. You probably are going to keep putting money away. And by the time you get to be 65 at retirement, I think that you're likely to have a lot more money in these accounts. You didn't mention a house, but I presume you have a house as well. It may be that you actually don't need this. You probably could self-insure. If you like the idea of having some sort of insurance product in place just because, it's not the worst thing to throw some money into one of these hybrid policies. But I don't know. I'm not exactly sure if you really need long-term care insurance. Mark, do you think that with this net worth today, presuming 15 years from now they're going to retire, that they actually need any long-term care insurance? I'm leaning no also. So, I mean, look, you can check it out with other providers, but I'm leaning no, and I think you are too. I think that in the next 15 years, it's pretty easy to see how you could have $3-4 million bucks outside of your residence, and that really, it means that you can self-insure. Okay, it's Jill on Money, and before we go to the break, just remember, if you've got a financial question, you want to join us in the Sleep Number Virtual Studios, send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com, and if you're on the website, just hit the contact button. Okay, we're going to a break. Coming back, questions of yours coming up in the second hour. Stay tuned.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. It's hour number 2, and we are delighted to be joined by a special guest. We'll get to him in a second. Brent Weiss, a recidivist guest. He's from our sponsor, Facet Wealth. I want to let you guys all know that as you listen to this conversation about insurance, that I just learned of a couple of different people who admitted to me sheepishly, you ready for this, at a memorial service, that they had no insurance or no estate planning, and they were people who really should. So this is my plea to you guys, which is, if you know that you need something, can't you just make it happen? Come on, really. As we have this conversation with Brent, we're going to start off talking about life insurance, specifically term life, but we're going to talk about long-term care and disability. But overall, this is something that should rise to the top of your to-do list. It really should. So let's start with our conversation with Brent Weiss. He is a certified financial planner, the chief evangelist of our sponsor, Facet Wealth. Here we go. Brent, we just got a great question about insurance, and I wanted to run by some insurance basics with you. So we had a really great caller, young family, married couple, 37-ish, couple of kids. Guys like, what do you think about this? We have the 10 times your income for life insurance needs. So a lot of people will say to us about life insurance, like, well, can't I just use that 10 times rule of thumb? Why is that not the greatest? I mean, I guess it's better than nothing, but really, what do you need to do to figure out what your insurance needs are?
Well, so there's a lot of things you can do, but let's start with the simple question here of the 10x rule of thumb. I think, my stance on this is there are two things in life I don't follow from a financial planning perspective, and that's rules of thumb and laws of averages. Because at the end of the day, when I ask my clients, it's like, well, do you want to just be average in what you have? Or do you actually want to have what you need to take care of your family? Everyone comes back and says, like, I'm working pretty hard. I don't consider myself average. Nothing wrong with that, but that's where we start. Here's a challenge, right? The rule of thumb, if anything, is just a good place to start. Here's the good news. If you have 10 times your salary, you're in a better position than most. A lot of us think, here's the biggest mistake I see, number one, when it comes to insurance, any kind of insurance, but life insurance in particular. It's like, the statement is this: I have insurance, so therefore I'm okay, or my family's okay. The right comment you want to make is, I have an appropriate amount of insurance, and therefore I'm okay, right? Having a policy doesn't mean you're covered. So 10 times your salary, good place to start. But you have to think about, what is your income? What assets, so savings, investments, what things do you own? Houses, cars, what debt do you have? How many kids do you have? What about education savings goals? How old are your kids? There's so many things that make this personal in terms of how much coverage you want or need to make sure your family is taken care of in the terrible event, right, that something happens to you and there's a loss of a life.
I feel like there are some nuance to this that we need to talk about, because it's so hard to understand like what my need is. For example, in this case of this guy, he's like, we said, we went through this whole thing, and I'm like, but wait, are your parents really rich? Or like, are there's people in your life, are you going to have money? Like those kinds of questions you wouldn't know to go through a typical insurance checklist. And so what do they do to kind of build in the nuance of the insurance questions?
I'm a financial planner, CFP professional myself, and this is not to pitch the idea of working with a professional, but the easiest way to do it is number one, either have an insurance agent, because at the end of the day, if you're doing life insurance or any kind of insurance, you need someone who can sell you, really provide a solution. They just happen to be selling insurance, to understand what it is. I'm biased in my opinion. If you're working with a financial planner, they can look at what I call your bigger picture, not just saying, oh, you need life insurance. Great, here you go. They're going to say, okay, well, let's take a step back and understand what we're trying to achieve with this life insurance. But the checklists are as follows. I do like the idea of at least having a multiple. I actually think the number is more like 15 or 20 times your annual salary, especially if your kids are younger. Because if you think about it, the way I think about it is, how do we sort of replace your income should it stop in the event of, again, a loss of a life?
Yeah.
The best way to do that is to say, okay, well, if we need to take a 4 or 5%, let's say, withdraw from some pot of money, right? The good thing about life insurance is it's tax-free. But trying to replace the income so that your surviving partner and your kids can maintain their lifestyle, their standard of living, but you're also thinking about, hey, how do I save for college? So there are some checklists in terms of what income you have, what kind of expenses you have, and how you want to replace it. The assets, really the debt you have, if you want to be able to pay that off, saving for college. But there are other things too, and not to overcomplicate things, but thinking about retirement income sources, Social Security and pensions, and how do you protect that for your partner ultimately should something happen. So it's a complicated thing. It doesn't have to be hard. I always recommend talking to a trusted professional to really understand what you need for you and your family.
It's understandable why insurance salespeople have this unbelievable ability to like just grab someone's whole financial life, even though it may not be in that person or the client's best interest, because in order to talk about life insurance, you actually have to talk about everything in your financial life, don't you? I mean, that's the thing that's so crazy. So in general, what percentage of this was asked of me, and I'll tell you what I responded. What percentage of your client base, and we're talking to Brent Weiss, who works at Facet Wealth. He's one of the co-founders. He's an advisor. He's the chief evangelist. What percentage of your clients have their insurance needs solved with term life insurance, would you say?
I'm going to say north of 95%.
That's what I said. I said 95, maybe 98%.
Good guess.
All right. So for those of you listening and you want to know why, it's just whole life insurance or permanent life insurance is really expensive. And most of us don't need insurance for our whole lives. We need it for a portion to cover the need between when we have this gap between what we've saved and what we need if something bad were to happen.
Well, so Jill, you made a really good point there. I always say buy term, invest the rest. I actually just ran quotes on this the other day because I was thinking like, for someone like me, a guy who's about to turn 40, well, getting close to 40, 39 technically on my birthday, but about to turn 40. I actually ran the quotes and to give the audience a sense here of term versus whole life, I actually have these numbers. I could get $2 million of term insurance if I'm healthy and in fairly good shape for almost like $75 a month. It's pretty inexpensive, less than a cable
I'll
bill or
say.
cell phone bill.
Yeah.
Now, I ran a whole life insurance, and I love how you spun this. Like, you don't necessarily need it for your whole life. There are situations where it makes sense, but most people don't need it. As a mom or a dad, what you need is inexpensive, good term life insurance. The whole life insurance policy now, you usually don't get $2 million of whole life insurance, but if you went for $2 million of whole life, it's almost $1,700 per month.
Oh my God.
Like absurd, right?
Oh
so
my God.
Now, by the way, you wouldn't get it for the same amount per month. You'd only get $100,000 of whole life insurance. So if you're thinking about the number one reason you have life insurance, it's protection. Get it inexpensively, go with term, and then save the other $1,500 a month that you have for other things, education, vacations, kids, all that kind of
That's
good stuff.
amazing.
So,
I mean,
right.
those numbers are startling. We'll get back to our conversation with Brent Weiss in just a moment. If you have a question about insurance, term, whole life, other kinds of insurance, these hybrid products, give us a holler. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And if you're on the website, jillonmoney.com, just hit the contact button. We'll be here. And then you can tell us if you want to join us in the Sleep Number virtual studios. Check it out. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And if you want to get a little bit of good knowledge, go check out our website, jillonmoney.com. You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. You can read the stuff that I write. You can listen to old programs. You can watch TV appearances. There's so much there for you. All there just for you at jillonmoney.com. And if you've got a question that bubbles up, just hit the contact button and we will be happy to answer it. Let's continue our conversation with Facet Wealth's Brent Weiss. He's a certified financial planner, and we're talking about insurance, and it's really important. So listen up. Let's talk about another big area of insurance intrigue and excitement. And we make insurance fun. We make death and dying fun, Brent. Long-term care insurance. We have gotten about a bazillion questions about it because, of course, the cost of long-term care has gone up very dramatically. And then there are these strange situations where I'm sure this has happened to people who you talk to. You get somebody who's like, I bought this long-term care policy 10 years ago, and I just got a notice from the company that my premium is going up by a ridiculous amount, like doubling. So what is your view on how people should approach long-term care insurance?
Long-term care insurance is tricky. Now, I used to be a licensed insurance agent. I no longer wear that hat, but I've actually sold long-term care insurance. To your point, I've been through that period of time where all of a sudden my clients get a letter that says, "Hey, your long-term care insurance policy is now doubling in cost," or
That's crazy, right?
or you have to reduce your benefits. Right? It's like, well, then why the heck did I get it? Here's the good news. I actually had a long conversation. I don't know if you're familiar with the Washington State long-term care program. It's now a requirement to pay a tax.
Yes, we've gotten some questions about this. I'd love for you to talk about this.
I know way too much about this, so
Okay,
happy to dive in.
Hold on. Let's go back.
Right.
Washington State passed a new law that requires people to buy into this long-term care fund or prove that they can opt out with private coverage. Is that about right?
Yeah, pretty much. There's a tax.
Okay.
Right?
So talk about what that means.
There's a couple things. So number one, we'll talk about what it is, and then number two, we'll go into like what it means for like public policy. Because there are actually, well, I'm going to bite my tongue there because I'll share with you. I had a long conversation with someone who runs a national long-term care insurance and really educational company. Here's the interesting thing. So everyone and we have a couple hundred clients in Washington. So we're reaching out to every single one of them to say, hey, what are your options? You either pay a tax, it's 0.58% on all of your income, base salary, bonus, stock compensation. So it can be a big number if you're in Washington. So you're going to pay this tax. You're essentially buying like state-funded long-term care insurance. If you ever need it, as of today, they would pay like $100 a day. right? That is a small portion of what you might actually need when it comes to it. Here's the kicker, though. If you move out of the state of Washington, you no longer qualify for it. So you could actually pay into this thing for 30 years, leave the state of Washington, and get nothing out of it.
That's a ridiculous plan.
I wouldn't want to pay a tax and get nothing from it. If you pay a tax, at least get something back from it. So that's what's happening in Washington. So we're reaching out to all of our clients and talking about long-term care insurance. If you do have privately owned long-term care insurance, you can opt out of it and not pay the tax. We're recommending that to most of our clients because there are inexpensive ways that we can come back to in a second. The more interesting thing here is the impact on public policy. So Washington state did this. It's one state. But what I've learned is there are actually 12 other states that are watching the state of Washington to say, this is interesting. Should we do it? Now, I think the typical states come to mind, California, New York. They just happen in the state of Maryland because they're higher tax states anyways. But a lot of states are starting to look at this and say, maybe we should have a tax for people because it helps to fund long-term care. The bottom line is this. Long-term care is tricky. We can talk about the nuances. I like to go to my clients and say, you don't always need long-term care insurance, but you need a plan for long-term care. I'd rather have my clients in the position of control, meaning they control their own destiny, versus having to pay a state and a tax, or if they leave that state at any point in their life, they no longer qualify.
To me, that is a real miss by the state. I mean, I think that that's crazy not to make it portable in some way. So what are lower cost long-term care options? Tell us where these are, Tonto.
Yeah, this is like my crystal ball for long-term care insurance. So the one point I do want to make here is we were talking about the rising premiums, how much you pay every year for long-term care insurance. Insurance companies made a big mistake when they were first writing or offering these policies to people. So for about a decade, and this is why insurance companies have a black eye from this. They didn't price them properly, meaning they didn't know how to actually insure the risk. They actually do a very, very good job now of doing it. I mean, companies have gotten out. John Hancock is one just said, I'm getting out of this long-term care insurance craziness. The policies are better. There's standalone long-term care, which just means you pay an insurance premium for many, many years until maybe you need it, and then it'll pay you some money. That's the best way to actually cover it. Insurance companies got smart and said, okay, what else can we do that might be more palatable for people? So you can actually now buy a life insurance policy. It would be permanent, right? As we just discussed.
Right.
That could actually pay you part of the death benefit as a long-term care insurance policy. That's it. So either way, you're going to get, well, maybe not you are getting your money back, but your family. So you're going to pay this premium, but the money's coming back. That feels more palatable. By the way, regardless of where you live, you buy an insurance policy in Maryland, you go to California, Texas, Florida, who cares? I mean, New York, right? That's still your money. You're in control. It's yours. It's your family's ultimately down the road. There are by the way, they call these things hybrid policies. It just means they're taking an insurance policy, adding long-term care, hybrid.
Right.
There's an annuity policy. You can actually buy an annuity that has a long-term care insurance rider that I shouldn't say a good number. A few of my clients actually like because they could use it for income or they can use it for long-term care. There are ways to solve for long-term care insurance that a lot of people aren't aware of, which is why we always recommend talk to someone who can help you understand what your options are and decide if it makes sense and if it's affordable for you and your family. Or frankly, the best thing you can do is always proactive planning in advance. I know this sounds crazy. I'm a planner. This is just what we do. Getting ahead of it, even for mom and dad. I'm turning 40. My parents are in their 60s and 70s. Like, I'm thinking about it myself, but planning ahead is always your best solution than trying to be reactive with some kind of expensive insurance down the road.
Now, just a little plug for you and the company, though. Like, you guys will do this analysis, but you don't sell insurance. Is that right?
100%. I don't want to make that commission or have any conflict of interest, but we will help our clients, first of all, look at their entire financial life, not just insurance or whatever it is, and then introduce them to somebody so they understand their options, what the best solution is, and then they'll be able to choose and control how they manage long-term care costs in the future.
Okay. I mean, I feel like that's kind of a tough one, but I thought one solution, even if whether you're using the hybrid or using something else, that you don't have to necessarily cover 100% of your long-term care need. So you could go to the Genworth website and you could look at their long-term care study, which is really scary because, it's like, it's $100,000 a year if you live in most parts of the country for long-term care. But when you dig deeper, that is not, there are plenty of horror stories, I get it, but for most people, that is not how much it costs because most of it is shorter dollars for shorter time horizons. So having some portion covered. Are you okay with that? I mean, just to kind of lower the premium hit for folks?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot like saving for an education. I never recommend you put 100% of your money in a 529 plan, right? Because you just don't know what's going to happen. Same with long-term care insurance. It's rare that we say, let's try to cover everything. If you live in Florida, it can range from $10,000 per year, or maybe you're in California and it could be $80,000 or $90,000 a year. The range is so big. The bottom line is this, like, understand partially insuring, especially this risk, because you don't know if it's going to happen, is a great way to do it. The bottom line is understand your risks, find something that's affordable for you and your family. Even if it's covering 50% or 25%, I think it's a brilliant idea and probably the better way to do it.
We'll get back to our conversation with Brent Weiss in just a second. Hey, if you've got a question about maybe your long-term care insurance needs, do you really need to cover every single potential catastrophe? Do you have enough money? Just let us know. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And if you're on the website, don't forget, hit that contact button. Maybe right before you hit the contact button, subscribe to our two podcasts, Jill on Money and I on Money. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. We are here answering your financial questions. Hey, you know what, Mark? I don't know if you caught this in the last blog post I did last week. And I ended a sort of a little bit of a bummer of a column with pretty upbeat information. And that is that Americans have started a record-breaking 6.7 million new businesses in the nearly year and a half since COVID reared its ugly head. Boy, does that show that you are all optimistic. God bless. But what's interesting about that to me is that there's a lot of people who've discovered that their gig or their contract work is going to become their main form of compensation. They're going to maybe quit their jobs. You know, we talk about this great resignation, and there's so much in the news about this. I'm sure you're hearing this from friends of yours. We're hearing it from those of you who listen to the program. If you're considering doing that, working for yourself, one form of insurance that is vital is called disability insurance. And in our continued conversation with Brent Weiss, we're going to talk about why that's so important. Here's more of our conversation with Brent Weiss from Facet Wealth. Given that so many people are either gig workers, contract workers, many more people starting businesses, disability, kind of a big issue. What's your view on disability insurance? Why do people need it?
Disability is actually a big one where people get there are a lot of mistakes made. So to your point, there's employer provided group policies, which most have, and then private disability insurance. We'll start with private since we were going there with gig workers. You can get disability. You should, first of all, in my opinion, if you don't have disability, you are subjecting yourself to a lot of unnecessary risk. Because if you're hurt and you can't work, I feel like I'm doing an Affleck commercial there.
Yeah, I know.
Right? I see the duck flapping around here. You're putting yourself at risk because how do you actually cover your expenses? So the bottom line is you need it. The challenge with gig workers, if you try to go to get private insurance, private disability insurance, just through an insurance carrier, you're going to need at least 2 or 3 years of consistent income to actually qualify. So if you just started gig work 3 or 6 months ago during the pandemic, and you go to get disability, they're going to come back and say, sorry, you don't qualify. So that's actually a different level of risk for gig employers, even self-employed individuals that have businesses in the last year or two. You typically need 2 years of tax returns before an insurance company is going to come back and actually give you a policy. So you have to plan differently until you have that. That's a nuance a lot of people don't understand. I mean, first of all, most people don't even know they need it or want it as a self-employed individual gig worker. Number two, it's going to take you a while to qualify. So be very clear in terms of how you actually adjust the rest of your plan, maybe a larger emergency fund, or trying to figure out how to protect yourself and your family in the event of a period of disability where you can't earn income.
Now, I heard this statistic. Maybe you can dispel it. I don't know if it's still true, but that there was, from a probability basis, if you are, let's just say, a young-ish, let's say a 40-year-old healthy person, that statistically you're much more likely to be disabled before the age of 65 than to die before the age of 65. Is that about right, you think?
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
So that's wild. And disability definitely is expensive and gets short shrift. That's the weird thing, that like we're all very easily, sort of like, oh yeah, I can just cover my like life insurance needs with term, but we're very blasé about this idea around disability. So I actually think it's really important. I happen to have had a client in my former life, when I had clients, started his own business. And I remember when he was starting it, I'd said, like, let's just get some disability, because we did sell insurance. Let's get some disability before you leave the bank. Let's just get it. Nah, I don't need it. And long story short is, a guy was diagnosed with MS 3 years after he left his and it's so scary. And there's no way to go back and say, I told you so. You feel awful. All I felt was awful. It was just awful.
In that story, there's a couple of really good points here. And I say this to every one of my clients. Number one, you're never going to be the hit at the cocktail party because you have really good insurance. When's the last time you walked in? It's like, look at this automobile insurance policy. Like it's never going to be fun. Number two, you're never going to like writing the check, or if you pay electronically, you're never going to like paying that insurance premium. I promise you that. I'm a financial planner. I understand the importance. I still hate writing that check every single year. Right. Yeah. But we got to keep that in mind. And then number three, there's a psychological factor here that you're paying for something that you hope you never use.
Yeah.
I mean, how often do you like to go pay, like, oh, I'm gonna give you some money to do nothing for me. But here's what I can share with you. As we get older, right, especially if we're living longer, hence why long-term care insurance becomes really important. We're living longer. We're going through a lot of different things in life right now with the pandemic. That's not to scare people. It's just to step back and say how we really need to frame this in our lives, especially for parents out there, moms and dads with kids, is think about the protection you're providing so you can have peace of mind, freedom from worry, I was saying to our clients here at Facet. And that gives you the power of choice, right? To choose to spend time and create memories with your kids, to do like put you in control of the decisions you want to make moving forward versus being afraid that something could happen and your family's in trouble. That's the right way to think about it. Never going to be fun. You're never going to enjoy those conversations, but it's essential to giving you peace of mind for you and your family.
Can you give me one line about why property and casualty insurance is so important?
Because you work really hard to own things in your life, the dream home, a nice car, whatever it is, you deserve to protect it in the event of an emergency. So everything you work so hard for is protected.
Okay, thanks to Brent so much for hanging out with us. He is just a delight. We'll talk a little bit more about what you really need to be thinking about as you consider changing careers or going into self-employment. I think that a lot of folks may be shocked to learn how valuable some of these benefits are that you receive from your employer. Things you might take for granted, like disability, or maybe you've got term life insurance, or maybe you should actually take advantage of some of the benefits, because many of these benefits are what is called portable. You can bring them to another venture. You could basically keep them for yourself. So it's really important you check in with us if you're considering this. So please do that. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And when we come back, we're going to answer more of your questions.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And it was great to talk to Brent Weiss from Facet Wealth. I think that sometimes it's fun to talk about some of these so-called boring topics with somebody else. And I say that because I know it's a drag to think about life insurance, long-term care insurance, disability insurance, auto insurance, home. These are not like exciting, fun, yay, I get to retire. I get to have financial independence. I get to pursue a new endeavor, all those things. Like, I know those are really fun, but we really need to think about how we can cover these basics before we start imagining these fun new endeavors. So I encourage you to consider these questions and look at your personal finances before you jump. You really should. And if you're thinking about doing that and you need another opinion, you can check out Brent's firm. It's called Facet Wealth. And Facet Wealth is pretty cool because what they're doing is goal-based financial planning. Why is that important? Because you're not measuring yourself against another person your age or who's like you. You're measuring yourself against you. What is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? How can you accomplish that by going through a financial planning process? That's really what Facet Wealth is all about. They've got conflict-free planning. It's goal-based. You get a dedicated certified financial planner, and you've got no wealth or account minimums. So put it all together, it's kind of cool. So check it out, facetwealth.com. Okay, Mark, we got to get to a question here. This is from Gloria. Gloria's 58. Her husband's 59 and a half. By the way, only in like the US does anyone care about 59 and a half. It's all about the tax code, right? Okay. We both work, but his job is very physical and he is ready to retire. We have saved and we have 2 rental properties. Our house and the 2 rentals are on the verge of being paid off. That's great. We've been focused on saving money to have for retirement, but now that it's almost time, we're not sure if we have enough money or how much we should be withdrawing from our accounts. No debt other than those mortgages. We live simply, and I'm so used to saving for the future that the thought of actually starting to use the money we've been saving is kind of freaking me out. Mark, isn't that so common? That's like probably, everyone's really good at accumulation, decumulating, spending the money, a lot harder. Okay, please help me figure out if it's time to start using the money or if we need to keep saving. Here we go. The rentals, they net 25 grand a year once the mortgages will be paid off. All right. Combined IRAs, simples, after-tax IRA, Roth IRAs, $1 million. Cash accounts, 150,000. We're going to wait until we're both at full retirement age to apply for Social Security. We both worked since we were teenagers. Thank you, Gloria. What did Gloria leave out, ladies and gentlemen? Well, what do you need to live on, Gloria? Come on now. What I can tell you is this. If you have rentals of 25 grand, okay? So you're going to have to figure out how to spend money between now and your full retirement age, right? And if he's going to retire, you got a problem. Number one, where are you getting your health coverage? That's number one. So if you have health coverage, maybe because one of you is involved in an organization that provides health care from the moment you retire until Medicare, 65, that's great. But you're going to have to spend some of that $1 million to be able to float you until that time. Then you need to be able to pull enough money off to actually spend money on yourselves and subsist. So if you think that you can live on the 25 grand a year of your rental, plus about 30 or 35 grand a year from all those retirement accounts net, because you have to remember you got to pay tax on some of this money, then you can do it. I think you got to save more. What do you think, Mark? I think they got a couple of years to go. Right. But if he's saying if they spend 50 or 60 grand a year, maybe they can do it. I don't know if they could, Mark, because you get 25 from the rentals. So even if you got to generate another 25, you got to pull money out of I don't know how the money is allocated. I don't know if most of it's pre-tax or some of it is after tax, but you're going to spend a chunk of that money. And I'm guessing, a couple $100,000 to $300,000 out of that $1 million in order to get you to the Medicare / Social Security time that you can claim. Yeah, Mark says if these properties are only bringing in 12 grand each, maybe it's worth selling one of them. The long story short, Gloria, is we need more information. So here's what we want to know. What's your house worth? What are your 2 rentals worth? And itemize it and tell us each rental, what each one is pulling in. Out of your IRAs, how much is simple? How much is after-tax IRA? How much is Roth IRA? Are you entitled to health insurance? Will you continue to work? Okay, so if you're going to work and you're going to get your health benefits, are you willing to work until age 65? I want to know more information. So anyone, if you're thinking about like, oh, do I have enough? These are all the questions we're asking. These are the questions you got to ask yourself. And if you want to ask us, that's cool. Ask us. We're happy to take those questions. Just send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. You see, Mark, if Gloria came and joined us here in the Sleep Number virtual studios, she might actually be able to have smart, effortless, and comfortable sleep. Get it? Because we'd ask her all these questions, we'd answer it, everything would be done. So join us. Let us know if you want to come on the air with us. Okay. It's Jill on Money, and we're broadcasting from the Sleep Number virtual studios. Sleep Number, smart, effortless, comfort. Yeah. I love a good night's sleep. Okay, we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. Before we finish up the program, let's answer one more question. If you're on the website, jillonmoney.com, all you need to do is click the contact button. Chris did that. Chris says in his subject line, how do I ensure my wife is set when I retire? Okay. I just retired from the federal government. I am 58 years old. My wife is 12 years younger. Mark, did you see this next sentence? We have 6 children ranging from 12 to 21 and at home. And their 12-year-old has special needs. Okay, Chris says, I'm working as a contractor possibly for 2 more years. I'm interested in what makes sense for life insurance, maybe a special needs trust, when to draw Social Security. Do you imagine, Mark, that potentially in this case that the younger wife is home full time? That's what I do. Like, how can you work if you have 6 kids? She's working, I'll tell you. She ain't getting paid that much. She's working at home is my guess. I think that what you need to do, I actually think you probably may want to talk to a financial advisor, but at the very least, you need to speak to an attorney, an estate attorney who has some comfort and experience with special needs trusts, because what you want to do when you have a special needs trust is you want to allocate a certain amount of money for your special needs child so that that child can continue to receive benefits from the government. So that's what a special needs trust does. I don't know how much money you've saved already. I don't know what your pension is, what the benefit looks like. So we need a lot more information. But if you need more information and you want to help find some different answers, I really would encourage you to seek some financial planning advice. Really, truly, it will do you good and your family. Ooh, there's a lot going on there. All right, that's it. That's the program. And if you have a question, don't forget, you can always find us. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And if you are on our website, jillonmoney.com, don't forget, you can sign up. You can basically subscribe to both podcasts, Jill on Money and I on Money. You can get it at Apple or anywhere else you get your podcasts. We like to tell you that even though we're talking about money all the time, it can be a little bit much, I know. So try to do something nice for someone else today. It would really make that person feel better. It will make you feel better. Our music is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is the best executive producer in the world. Just take my word for it, because he is. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.